The C-SPAN Civics bus is traveling the country, visiting libraries, bookstores, festivals, and authors. Here are some of the people and places we visited.
We are here at the University of South Florida at the St. Petersburg Times Festival of Reading with Professor Deanna Michael, author of Jimmy Carter as Education Policymaker, Equal Opportunity and Efficiency. Ms. Michael, how did Jimmy Carter's policies and thinking process change as he moved from school board member to governor of Georgia to president?
Through the process of his political career, he moved from someone who was looking at a local school district and moved to a system approach, looking at building bureaucracy, looking at how government can serve children with special needs or who grow up in poverty.
What is the educational efficiency movement and how does it relate to equal opportunity?
I'm glad you asked. The educational efficiency movement was the move toward using systematic surveys, studies to make decisions about schools. It really became a cost accounting approach to schooling. So instead of trying to measure how students learned, we measured the ratio of student and teachers until failure. And that has stayed around. Equal opportunity addressed allowing all students access to information, knowledge, and an education. So where these two concepts clash, you have to look at, with public money, the most efficient way to use public money to give access to all students.
What are some of the largest obstacles that are facing education policy?
The lack of the community support for public schools. That is a huge obstacle at this moment because the schools became increasingly bureaucratic, and this was seen in Carter's career as well. And then we've realized that parent involvement, community commitment, all these local initiatives are so important for student achievement that bureaucratic decisions made and the top of the hierarchy, it's almost impossible to translate that into student achievement in a school. Where teachers can see what's going on with a student, work with a school board, and the school board can relate what's going on to the state, you see going up, and that's a much more effective model for student achievement.
Carter set education as one of his the issues that were forefront in his campaign. How did he influence the presidencies following his in education?
Carter established the Department of Education on the federal level, and at the time he promised that it would not be a Ministry of Education. It was not an attempt to consolidate function in the educational arena. But what has happened since the Carter presidency is that it has increasingly become a centralization point, and it has increasingly affected policy and currently really drives policy and education.
You write that in the second half of the 20th century, educational policy has moved from a local concern to a federal political issue. How did this happen, and is this the best way to handle education policy?
I actually think it's one of the least efficient ways to handle educational policy. How it happened was the efficiency, cost accounting ideas. You know, we will buy more, we will, collect, consolidate, and use our money more effectively. That is a wonderful idea, except when you're using human beings. And so while this has happened over a 40-year period or longer, the best way to address educational policy is through looking at what do we mean by excellence? What do we mean by efficiency? What does this mean in human terms? How do we support communities? How do we support families? How do we support local school districts? Because that's where education is actually delivered. So if you're going to use an effective and efficient model, you look at where the so-called product is delivered. And the education to children is delivered at the local level. And so that's, for me, a much more effective and efficient model.
There are a few cities across the country that have started paying students as rewards for good grades. DC just started this as well. What are your thoughts on that as an incentive for students to do better?
Well, the old-fashioned traditional part of me screeches at that idea. I don't know how effective that is, because in the so-called real world, you are asked to do a lot of things at work that you are not paid for. But you may get promoted because you did all these extra things. So it's the internal incentive and the external incentive. That's what we were really looking at. And consistently, internal drive is so much stronger at student achievement than external incentives, that it's a false start in my mind.
People say that No Child Left Behind is a controversial piece of legislation. Where do you think it needs to go from here as we get a new presidency coming in the next week?
I think that they have to look at what is really excellence. Is excellence, and who's accountable? What are the bureaucrats? And I don't mean that in a negative way. Bureaucracy is bureaucracy, and then that's how we run large institutions. But who's accountable for what? If accountability rests totally on local shoulders and on the children's shoulders and on the parents' shoulders, then let's give them the power to make decisions. If accountability is at the top, then they can make decisions. And so No Child Left Behind consolidated power at the top, at the state level and at the federal level, and calls itself giving power to the parents, but it doesn't. And so the local school boards, the parents, teachers, even the state hierarchy, they're the ones that are held accountable. And so they are the ones that should have the power to make decisions. They are the ones that should be able to allocate funding. They are the ones that should be able to define what excellence is, what efficiency is. Because when you define excellence by scores, what you do is you dehumanize the child. When you define excellence as effort, commitment, human qualities, then you're teaching somebody to become an active member in a democracy.
What is President Carter doing today still in the education policy world?
Well, the Carter Center is very committed to education as far as addressing health, political races, democracy. And Carter is still active in the background. He has stepped down, from my understanding, from an active daily administrative work at the Carter Center, but he's still very, very much involved.
We've been speaking with Deanna Michael at the St. Petersburg Time Festival of Reading, author of Jimmy Carter as Education Policymaker. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can view Book TV programs, sign up for a weekly email of our schedule, and learn about upcoming programs at booktv.org. You can click on the Viewer Input tab and email us. Tell us what you're reading and what you think of our programs.